Golf Central. Brought to you by Titleist.
And hi again, everyone. Welcome inside our Golf Channel studios here in Orlando. Jimmy Roberts along with Billy Kratzert and Brandel Chambly. What a day to remember in the game of golf. As we were just saying, if you took a nap, you really missed a few things. Why don't we start out in Ohio, which has been the center of the sporting world lately with the Cavaliers and everything. At the World Golf Championship Bridgestone Invitational, here's Jason Day. Started the day tied for the lead with Scott Piercy.
And somewhere Billy Kratzert was grinning when this one went down. You were just grinning. I know you were. You're like, yeah, I told you. Here we go again.
Takes the two-shot lead. 10th hole now.
Well, dead center of the fairway.
Yeah, right dead center in the fairway.
Just inside 130 yards, just trying to keep it underneath the hole.
Taking some off of it. I mean, that has been the shot that had caused him some problems, but certainly something he's worked on over the last year for sure.
Looked like maybe he was going to run away. Scott Piercy playing alongside of him, also at 10, down by 1.
And this coming off a bogey at the 9th, so trying to right the ship, and that got him back to 6 under par, and briefly tied for the lead until this perfect putt by Jason Day at the 10th.
7 feet for birdie, retakes the lead at 7 under. Aha! Then there was this man. He started the day 3 back. Here he is on 13.
Well, he shot 66 on Saturday, and putting was a little bit better in the last 2 rounds.
Gets to 5 under, 2 back. Moved to 14 now.
This was just a jaw-dropping display of brawn off of the tee, precision into the greens, and touch up on the greens. It's golf at its highest level. Absolute highest level. Does not get played any better than this. Find the biggest stage, put him there, and he's comfortable right now. It is just a joy to watch.
So he's 1 back at 6 under par. Meanwhile, on 13, Day in big trouble.
Well, he drove it left off the tee, hit a 3-wood off the tee, drove it in trouble, and got away with 4.
Never looked like making 4.
No, never. But I can't understand why he was trying to hit a hook off the tee when the hole goes left to right.
Keeps the 1-shot lead, then on 15, still 1 up, 4.5 feet to save par, and that was not something we have been used to seeing.
No, just missed the green a little long and left and chipped to 4 feet, an inexplicable bogey.
And this may have been the shot of the day.
Yes, just a great look at a putt up the hill by the U.S. Open champion.
And he takes the lead at 7 under par. Meanwhile, this was the hole of the day. For all the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah, and he missed it left on 13 with a hook, and this one going left also. This one winds up underneath the pine tree over there.
That was a quick change of direction, certainly. That club was definitely beneath the plane on the way down, and just a quick toe flip left him underneath the Christmas trees. There are no presents under there, not at all. There's curses under there, snakes, all kinds of boogeymen. And everybody's wondering where it went. It had ended up right behind a tree, but it turns out a spectator had grabbed the ball and thrown it behind the tree. So tour officials intervene, common sense prevails, and
he gets a drop.
He gets a drop. Where would it have been had it been allowed to finish? And then, of course, he hits a shot that had many, many people scratching their heads. But I think it's important to note that scramblers, and he'd certainly fall in that category, don't always make the popular decision. They don't always play by the numbers. They take chances.
And meanwhile, on 18, Dustin Johnson had missed the fairway, tried to punch out, but it just clips a limb on his second shot.
That was a bad break, really bad break. It just barely missed that limb, and it would have been fine, right short of the green.
But he played a smart 3rd shot. He played it wide to the right. He was playing for bogey all the way, and that's what he needed.
So he was 2 up on Scott Piercy.
This was close. I mean, this had action. Right there when it started to grab, I thought maybe it would drag back down.
He did not go away.
And a hug from his son. How about Dustin Johnson? His 2nd consecutive victory. Shocking finish. First 54-hole lead in the last 6 tries that Day has failed to convert. And for the 4th time in the last 5 years, the winner here has come from behind. Dustin Johnson is projected, I should say, to move past Jordan Spieth to number 2 in the world. Get this, by 2 1/1000th of a point. After a very, very busy day, Dustin Johnson with George Savaricas.
66 on the weekend, enough for you to get the win, Dustin. How were you able to put it together?
I felt like I played pretty solid. Just, 2 good scores on the weekend. I was very pleased with that. Obviously, I got a little help from the guys, the guys that were ahead of me. I felt like I've just played really solid, on the weekend.
For a lot of the day, you're trying to chase down the world number 1. What was the mindset on that back 9? Did you know how big that putt was on 17?
Yeah, I mean, every putt on the back 9 was big. It was one of those things. I shot a couple under on the front. I knew I needed to make a few birdies on the back 9 to have a chance to win. And I rolled in some nice putts there on the 13, 14, and 17. And then unfortunately they made a couple bogeys for me. So. It was a good solid day. Golf course is playing really tough. It's hard to get in the fairway and, even harder to get it close to the hole.
After coming up just short for a lot of the season, you've arguably put together one of your most dominant stretches in winning the U.S. Open and this World Golf Championship event. Describe the run that you've been on.
Yeah, I feel like I've been playing really well all year. I've been driving it beautifully. I've been hitting my irons really good, wedging it really good. So, it's, the thing that was not, quite working was the putter. Wasn't consistent enough. Now I feel like I'm rolling the ball really well. I've been working on it pretty hard. So it's, it's finally coming around and, it's definitely showing.
That's been a nice run to see. For all the hype we had heard with the big 3 and Rory, Jason, Jordan, you've made quite the run your last 2 starts. Appreciate the time, DJ. Let's go back to the studio.
All right, George, thanks very much. Johnson today, among other things, accomplished the rare feat of immediately following up his first major victory with a win in his next start. Dan Keimer did it after winning PGAs at Whistling Straits. What a day. Tell you what, I think the first question, how did he get it done? He got it done with the putter, as he said. The putter kind of came around. But it's got to be more than that. His ball striking was extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely right. You could pick any number of irons and say, wow, it was his iron play. He led in proximity to the hole. He did, but he led by a narrow margin. Where he separated himself from the field was what he did with his driver, both in terms of accuracy and terms of distance. He was more than twice as good as his next closest pursuer. It is so rare that you see somebody come along that drives the ball as far as he did today. He averaged 354 yards off of the tee and managed to hit 8 fairways. One of those holes today was the 13th. And this was just a gorgeous drive. You look down there and you think, where is the fairway? It's just a ribbon of the fairway, and the fairways are firm. So typically, a tour pro hits 10 out of 14 fairways. That's pretty good. Around here, if he hits half of them, that's pretty good. More than half, well, you're headed in the right direction. Absolutely bisected that fairway and would go on to make birdie. That tee shot at 13 went 335 yards. Watch him pick the tee up here. Doesn't have to look at it. I can promise you there's no better feeling in golf than that. And that goes 335 yards, and it absolutely divides the fairway in 2. And he would go on to make another 3. What he did off of the tee is so rare. 4th in driving accuracy, 2nd in driving distance. That's the likes of the numbers of some of the greatest drivers who have won around here. Jimmy, you know this stat very well.
Yeah, it's time for the Leader's Bag presented by Golfsmith. And take a look at these numbers. This is a prescription for getting it done on a difficult golf course, and you understand why he's able to be successful on courses like this and on Oakmont. When you drive the ball as far as he does and as straight as he does,
Well, if the golf courses had a steady diet of Oakmont and Akron, I do believe we'd have a restructuring of the world ranking. Take a look at some of the drivers who have won here. Great drivers of the golf ball in weeks that they won here. Rory McIlroy hit 34 fairways that week and averaged 334 yards off of the tee. Of course, Tiger Woods set the mark in 2000 where he hit 32 fairways and averaged 322 yards off of the tee. So look at what Dustin Johnson did today. Same number of fairways. fairways, 8 a day on average, and he averaged 341 yards. This is masculine stuff. These are what the very best do. The hardest thing to do in the game is hit it long and straight. One of the great things about Akron is it doesn't take the driver out of your hand. You can hit it if you dare to. And these guys had the talent and the skill and did, and won pretty convincingly here.
And that is the leader's bag presented by Golfsmith. And 11th win for Dustin Johnson, Billy. But it's the first time that he's actually been able to put together consecutive wins. And this is a guy who's had so much success on the PGA Tour. We know he's got the longest streak of years going with a win each season. But this is only the second time in his career that he's had 2 wins in a season, and it's the first time in his career that he's won 2 events consecutively.
Well, and you heard in the interview the way that he's putting, Jimmy. I think the way that he has gone about his business, the way that he putted at Oakmont. You look at the final 2 rounds here. He was 6th in stroke gain putting in this final round, Brandel. He was 3rd in strokes gained putting. And then you couple that with the way that he has driven the ball, and you give yourself that opportunity to get the ball close to the hole, you start capitalizing on it. And his greens in regulation, he hit 15 of 18 greens today. He hit 27 of 36 over the weekend. This was a ball striking machine. Yes, I love the long ball. I love watching the Tiger Woods. I love watching Dustin Johnson, Bubba, and all the guys. But the opportunity, I think that's the key word. The opportunity he was given to score here at Akron was with the driver, and he took advantage of it because he is the #1 player on tour from 50 to 125, and with the length that he was driving it, he had a lot of those opportunities.
Yes, he did.
29 for 30 also, by the way, putting, what's that, inside of 10 feet? That'll also work for you on a very, very difficult golf course. How about Dustin Johnson from behind? Well, he's done pretty well. Look at this, 54-hole comebacks. Of course, there's this one, and then there's the one in his previous start, and then there's that brilliant display down at Doral where there were some very, very difficult conditions, and he was able to come back and beat J.B. Holmes. So, I'm not sure about the big picture of this thing. You know, I think the big picture is Dustin Johnson, he's good. You know, the numbers have already borne this out, but just going forward, what does this say for him?
Well, just looking at what he can do generally, I think even his peers recognize that he can do things that he can't. He is an athletic phenomenon. Years ago, people used to talk in the same vein about Tom Weiskopf as an athletic phenomenon. In 1973, the Open Championship was played at Royal Troon, and that is where Tom Weiskopf prevailed. Tom Weiskopf, just like Dustin Johnson, had long arms, put it in a shut club face position at the top, and then turned and burned. It was just a gorgeous, absolute gorgeous move. If it had world rankings then, you've been hard-pressed not to have Tom Weiskopf as the #1 player in the world. Of course, the big 3 that year would have been Weiskopf, Watson, and Jack Nicklaus, but managed to win at Troon. It would surprise nobody if Dustin Johnson were to go on and win at Royal Troon. His last 4 events, he's finished 3rd, he's finished 5th, and he's finished first in the 2 biggest events, the U.S. Open and the WGC. So you couldn't have your game in all aspects. It's as if he's unlocked all of the upgrades to the game, and he is playing free. He's mentally, he's right there where he needs to be. With the driver, he's comfortable working it left to right or right to left. With his short irons and with his putter, I just don't remember watching anybody who is more comfortable with every aspect of their game than Dustin Johnson is right now.
Yeah, and you look at those physical skills that he does possess, and I mean, I think all of us are quite enviable of that. But what is really amazing is the resiliency that the man has had up until this stretch that he's having right now, to overcome what happened at Whistling Straits at the PGA, to overcome what happened at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, to come so close, to have the lead at the Open at St. Andrews and then falter on the weekend, shoot 150 on the weekend. You know, here's a guy you know, that just has a temporary memory of what happens. And for a golfer, That's awesome. If you have that, I mean, you are so far above the average, because I know when I played, I mean, if I hit a bad shot, I was what went wrong? What went wrong? I was always trying to figure it out. Where these guys today, especially a Dustin Johnson, he just goes and finds it and hits it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that, because my impression of this is whether he's winning or he's losing, you know, how well he's playing, how poorly he may be playing, he doesn't seem to get too up or two down, and that's a very, very valuable thing in any athletic endeavor. All right, there's another side to this story, and that's the side which features Jason Day, and it all turned for him on the 16th hole. He'd been struggling with the driver all day long, 5 of 8 fairways to start the day, but then 0 for 6 to finish, and this was the absolute undoing.
Yeah, this one going quick to the left, and you know, underneath over there. You take a 3-wood off the tee because you think you're going to put the ball in the fairway, not in trouble.
This clearly, Brandel, you mentioned it before, you know, maybe a bad choice, but it's in his DNA. Got to try.
That's exactly right, Jimmy. Great scramblers try things that others don't see, and they've been successful at them. And it's one of the reasons that they're so exciting to watch.
So the 16th was his undoing, and after the round, the world #1 talked about it.
16's always a tough par 5 anyways. If you don't get a good drive there, it's really tough to get any sort of wedge in your hand, and kind of made a mess of it. I was just sitting there really thinking about, you know, I, especially on the 3rd shot, I tried to hit it just left of the green. You can't hit it. You can't, if you're trying to hit a low punch, cut around the corner. That's what I was trying to go for, and I hit a good shot. I just didn't hit it hard enough. If I hit it long and left or into the trees, then it's a difficult up and down. And obviously it brings out of bounds into play too. But yeah, to be honest, I played pretty good golf up until, you know, 16. I really had 2 bad holes, really. I mean, I had a couple of bogeys, but I really just one hole that kind of derailed me, which was 16.
Okay, his putter couldn't save him today. Dustin Johnson was tied for 4th in driving accuracy for the week. Jason Day tied for 47th out of 58 players. Eventually, that's going to jump up and bite you, and it did on the 16th hole. Let's talk for a moment, though, about what options he might have had. Was there anything that you could imagine he could have done differently once he had already struck that first shot?
Well, given where he was on the 2nd shot, you know, it didn't look like he had anything but what he hit on the 2nd shot. But once he'd hit that and got the drop, there are a lot of things that he could have done. Obviously, this is the first shot, and he's trying to hit it underneath those trees, and there's no way of guessing, you know, how much hitting those trees is going to take off the shot. So the shot gets a little bit more oomph on it and makes its way across the fairway, and ultimately ends up behind a tree and gets a drop because somebody had touched the golf ball. From here, you scratch your head at what he was trying to do. He lays up short of the water, he's got a wedge in hand, and he's got a chance to save par. But again, great scramblers of the golf ball, like a Phil Mickelson, a Tom Watson, Seve Ballesteros, oftentimes they do things that don't make sense. They don't always play by the odds. They have talents that the rest of the world don't have. They see things that the rest of the world doesn't see. And sometimes they pull them off, and we talk about them for decades and decades. And sometimes they don't pull them off, and it's easy to sit here and say, what were they thinking?
Well, and sometimes, even for the world's #1, sometimes the game gets to going so fast. And that's when it's time to slow the game down. But if you remember, DJ made a birdie on the 17th hole, the 71st hole, and that roar was right there because the holes run parallel. So, you know, maybe that was a factor to take the risk, but I certainly agree with you, Brandel. I thought maybe laying it to the side over there, try to get it up and down, try to remain one back. But again, even for the best players in the world, you know, sometimes you make the bad decisions, but they make for the great stories.
I remember Phil trying to go through the trees at the Players' Championship, made it, and you know, said he didn't want to tell Bones where he was going. He made it. I remember him similarly trying to go through the trees at Bay Hill, didn't make it, and being taken to task for it. And Phil said, it's the way I play, it's the way you should play, because I win playing golf like this. And by the way, it's a lot more fun.
Well, you remember earlier this week, Jason Day said that he would not be participating in this summer's Olympic golf competition. Another Olympic withdrawal to report to you today. After his round at Firestone, world number 16 Hideki Matsuyama told the Japanese media that he would also not be going to Rio. So here's what the Japanese men's team at the Olympics will look like, at least for now. 30-year-old Yuta Ikeda and world number 95 Shingo Katayama. The deadline to finalize teams, remember, is July 11th, which is 1 week from tomorrow. A quick break, and then on the other side, more from Firestone. And we'll check in on the 100th French Open. Rory McIlroy closed the third round with some torrid golf. Would it continue? Highlights are next.
Golf Central is brought to you by Titleist, the #1 ball at the WGC Bridgestone Invitational. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. Bushnell Golf and the Tour X. Slope technology when you want it. Tournament legal when you need it.